Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everybody out there, how you doing? Day 13 of the 30-day Black History Teachings and Lessons. I say Black History because that's what everybody knows, or else I would have called it Kemetic Moorish Autochthonous Black History, or 30-day history. 30-day history teachings and lessons. Anyway, today we are going to discuss the Caribbean Nexus. The convergence point. Days 1 to 12 establishes the copper grid, the Washita Empire, and the Amazonian cities. Day 13 reveals where they meet. Okay, so we've already discussed the copper grid, the 315,000 year origins, pre-Younger Dryas civilization, the Washita Mound Builder Empire, the Olmec Gulf Coast anchor, the Amazon basin cities, Andean coastal cultures. Day 13 reveals the Caribbean as the nexus, the geographic zone where every branch of the original melanated seed arrived, recognized each other, and continued the science together. This lesson deepens the electromagnetic grid science of days 1 and 5 and the biological superconductor model, the copper over iron vein battery system, and the global precessional clock, all demonstrated most clearly in the Caribbean maritime relay architecture. What you think about that? Now, the Caribbean, the world's crossroads, right? You know, the Washita held the Mississippi Valley, the Olmec held the Gulf Coast, the Amazon cities processed the jungle grid, and the Andean builders tuned the peaks. The Pacific Maritime Y Group came down the Kelp Highway 18,000 years ago and seeded South America. Didn't know that, did you? Where do all these routes meet, however? Well, they meet in the Caribbean Sea, the island arc from Trinidad and Tobago in the south to Cuba in the northwest, is not a scattered collection of tropical islands. It is the relay network connecting the Atlantic grid, the African Mediterranean, the Pacific grid, the Kelp Highway, Andes, Amazon, the North American grid, the Mississippi Great Lakes seaboard, and the Gulf Coast grid, the Olmec Washita corridor. The Taino and the Kalinago Carib peoples were not isolated island communities. They were the operators of the world's most strategically positioned electromagnetic relay chain. Okay? The world's most strategically positioned electromagnetic relay chain. Moving on. Before the Taino, before the Kalinago, the Caribbean was first populated by descendants of the Pacific Maritime Branch, the group geneticists now called Population Y. And why do they call them that? Why Pikuya, from the Tupi word for ancestor. Okay? Who was the Y group? The Y group carried genetic ancestry more closely related to the Australian, Aboriginal, Melanesian, and Andamanese peoples than to any other living population. Let me read that again. The Y group carried genetic ancestry more closely related to Australian, Aboriginal, Melanesian, and Andamanese peoples than to any other living population. They arrived in South America via the Pacific coastal route approximately 18,000 to 15,000 years ago. They seeded the Amazon basin, the Andes, the Pacific coast of Peru and Chile, and the Atlantic coast of Brazil, where their morphology is preserved in the 11,500-year-old Lucia skull. Do you see why they're trying to erase us? From South America, they expanded northward. Trinidad is the southern gateway of the Caribbean arc and was a peninsula attached to Venezuela until approximately 11,000 years ago when rising post-glacial seas created the islands we know today. Grid science. Trinidad as a southern gateway. Trinidad's position at the base of the Caribbean arc makes it the first island reached by populations expanding northward from Venezuela. The Orinoco River flowing past Trinidad is the primary drainage system for the Venezuelan and Colombian Amazon, connecting Trinidad directly to the Amazon grid before island separation. The original melanated population arriving through Trinidad carried Y group genetics, melanin biology, and the electromagnetic grid knowledge of the South American seed. How you like my now? The Y group phenotype, why it matters. The Y group populations carried the original undifferentiated melanated phenotype. African or Australite morphology is broad facial features, dark skin, dense curly or woolly hair or wavy hair. This phenotype is documented in Luzia, in the earliest Brazilian skulls, and in the oral memory of Caribbean peoples describing dark-skinned original inhabitants. These were the biological superconductors of the grid, which leads to one of the most important scientific principles in the entire 30-day chronology. The biological science, melanin as the Earth's antenna. This is what I've been trying to tell you guys forever, that we, as a people of melanated people, we are very, very, very important to the Earth, right? So, the mounds, the pyramids, stone circles, earthworks of the original melanated civilizations were designed to interface with the human body, specifically with melanin biology. A melanated person standing in a properly constructed electromagnetic node is not just a visitor to the site, they are part of the circuit, quite literally. Isn't that crazy? What does melanin actually do? Well, mainstream science teaches melanin as skin pigment that absorbs UV radiation. This is the smallest possible description of one of the most sophisticated biological molecules on Earth. Black body absorber. Melanin absorbs across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, UV visible, infrared, and beyond. It does not just block radiation, it converts it. It's a semiconductor. Melanin behaves as a biological semiconductor. It can conduct electricity under specific conditions. This is measured laboratory physics, not metaphor. Stay with me. Superconductor interface. Under specific frequency conditions, particularly at the Earth's Schumann resonance of 7.83 hertz, melanin operates as a biological superconductor near zero resistance energy transfer through the nervous system. ATP generation, when melanin absorbs the Earth's electromagnetic field, the telluric current, and Schumann resonance, it converts that energy into adenosine triphosphate, whatever the hell that is, the fundamental cellular energy molecule. A melanated person in a high electromagnetic environment is literally photosynthesizing energy from the Earth's own field. What do you think about that? And then we have the pineal connection. The pineal gland is also heavily melanated, contains magnetite crystals, yes it does, confirmed published research, and is sensitive to geomagnetic fluctuations. Skin melanin plus pineal melanin equals a full body electromagnetic reception and processing system. Why do you think that we have been keeping that knowledge sacred? The parasympathetic activation. When a melanated person enters a properly tuned electromagnetic node, or like one of them chapels and castles that our ancestors used to build, like the different places in Cordoba and Al-Andalus, right? All these Moorish builds, Moorish cultures, they built resonance structures because we were supposed to connect to them biologically. Okay, the vagus nerve activation. The vagus nerve, the primary parasympathetic nerve, responds to the electromagnetic field. Nervous system shifts from sympathetic fight, flight, stress to parasympathetic, which is the rest, heal, receive. Brain frequency shift. Dominant brain frequency shifts from beta, 14 to 40 hertz, ordinary walking, toward alpha, 8 to 13 hertz, and theta, 4 to 7 hertz, the range of deep meditation, heightened intuition, expanded awareness, and accelerated learning. And now you understand why the original blacks of this world and this globe are extremely intelligent. That's why they were able to build pyramids and all that, because they were superconducted, man. The original builders knew this, right? At Alpha-Theta, cellular repair accelerates, immune function improves, and the body's bioelectric field becomes coherent, all cells oscillating in synchronized harmony. Do you understand now why they destroyed 100,000, nearly 100,000 mounds over 37 states in America? 100,000. You know why they were destroying them? Because we are connected to them. That was our healing. That was our sixth sense, so to speak. You understand? They destroyed them because we were connected to them. So they destroyed our culture. The original builders knew this, not as metaphysics, as a measurable biophysics refined over 315,000 years. The mounds are not churches. The pyramids were not tombs. The stone circles were not calendars. They were clinics, universities, communication towers, power stations, and they required a specific biological receiver to operate at full capacity. The melanated original peoples were the biological interface for Earth's own electromagnetic operating system. Tell me I'm wrong. Why were the mounds destroyed? Let me tell you why. In the 19th and 20th centuries, thousands of the 100,000 plus North American mounds were deliberately plowed over, excavated, or built upon. Golf courses, highways, shopping malls. Destroy the mound and you destroy the electromagnetic amplifier. Disconnect the amplifier and you disconnect the people from the Earth's own healing and cognitive enhancement frequencies. A disconnected people is much easier to reclassify, relocate, and control. The destruction of the mounds was a biological attack, severing the melanated population from their natural power source. So now for all of you that are talking about how you're an electrician and everything else, how you feel about this now? Tell me what you're going to say about this now, because you can't. It's irrefutable, this information. Irrefutable. Do you understand? Mm-mm-mm. Stop doubting me, man. I got the keys. I told you. Can't come at me. I got the keys. Now, the part that you're going to love. This is for one reader, that one listener that has been a little bit contemptuous. So listen to this one, okay? Day 5 established a 5 billion pound Great Lakes copper extraction, right? But we did not explain why copper was placed exactly where it was placed. Day 13 answers that right now. The galvanic cell model. When you place copper, a highly conductive metal, in direct contact with iron-rich soil that has magnetite and hematite in the presence of moisture, you create what electrochemists call a galvanic cell, a natural battery. Anode, the anode. Iron-rich earth provides the negative electroid, the source of electron flow. The cathode, copper serves as the positive electroid, the conductor that channels and directs the current. The electrolyte, groundwater, and mineral-saturated soil provide the medium through which ions travel between the two metals. The output, a stable, low voltage, high continuity electrical field, exactly the frequency range of the Earth's natural telluric current and the Schumann resonance. Y'all want receipts? I got all kinds. I do this all day. The original builders were not random in where they placed copper. They mapped the iron veins of the Earth, the magnetic channels running through the crust, and pinned those veins with copper at strategic intervals. This created a planetary-scale circuit board with amplified electromagnetic nodes at each pinpoint. What the Chinese called lungmei, dragon veins. What the Celtic tradition called ley lines. What modern geologists call magnetic anomaly zones. All the same thing, the iron nervous system of the Earth. What is the academic blind spot? Why do scholars miss this? When archaeologists find thousands of pounds of copper at a Hopewell Mound site in Ohio, they label it prestige goods, objects indicating high social status. This interpretation assumes the copper had the same role as gold jewelry in a modern capitalist society. Decorative wealth display. It never occurs to scholars shaped by civilization bias to ask, what if these people were electrical engineers? This is exactly what I've been trying to say since I started doing this and since I started doing all this research. They really do not respect the intelligence and the genius of the melanated population, especially the original one. They have no respect for it. And that's why they make assumptions like that. Don't you understand? That's why they make these assumptions. I mean, what if the copper was placed where it was because they understood galvanic chemistry, geomagnetic mapping, and bioelectromagnetics? The science was invisible because they could not conceive of its source. Black folks. Colorism and racism are the biggest problem on this earth today. I promise you so much. It's the biggest problem on the earth because it doesn't allow everyone to see that the original people of this earth are masters, geniuses, like total genius. And we're giving them no respect. Why? Because of colorism. Everybody's stealing our shit. Like everybody. Moorish builds all over the world. All over. I just looked at one in Milan. Exact same architecture, but they just call it Baroque or Romanesque or Beaux Arts. It's such nonsense. Stealing all that knowledge. And the knowledge carries through the entire earth. Earthworks all through Brazil, connected to the mountains, connected to the pyramids. Like, hello, it's a global network. Anyway, I digress. The Caribbean Copper Relay. The Caribbean islands sit on one of the most geologically active and magnetically complex zones in the Western Hemisphere. Do you understand me? The Caribbean plate is bordered by subduction zones to the north and volcanic arcs to the east. The entire island is underlain by iron-rich basaltic and volcanic rock, the ideal substrate for copper over iron galvanic battery systems. Can't make this shit up. So let's look at the Taino. The Taino maintain extensive copper networks. The guanin, a gold-copper alloy, was one of the most prized objects in Caribbean culture. Columbus's earliest documents record his astonishment at the guanin objects the Taino possessed, which he was told came from the south, South America, and the northeast, a direction corresponding to West Africa. West African metallurgical analysis of guanine has confirmed that the specific gold copper silver alloy ratios of Caribbean guanine objects are identical to West African metalworking signatures. This is documentation of continuous Atlantic trade. The Atlantic branch of the grid is still operational when Columbus arrives. We were everywhere, yo. Like everywhere. What people don't understand is before the Younger Dryas, the entire population of the globe was melanated. The entire thing. It's not a lie, it's just a biological truth, genealogical truth. Like don't be mad. That's just the way it is. The Taino were the masters of the Atlantic relay. Who were the Taino? The Taino were the Arawak-speaking peoples of the Greater Antilles, Cuba, Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, Jamaica, the Bahamas, widely known today as the people Columbus encountered first, a framing that reduces them to a footnote in European history. The Taino framework requires complete inversion. The Taino were the northern maritime relay operators of a grid system operational for thousands of years before Columbus was even blood clot born. It's that simple. Taino grid functions, Atlantic maritime navigation. The Taino operated canoe routes across the open Atlantic and maintained coastal relay routes up to the North American eastern seaboard. Their piraguas were up to 80 feet long, carrying 70 to 80 people, so they're boats. These were not fishing vessels. They were transatlantic freight. The botanical knowledge transfer. The Taino maintain one of the world's most sophisticated pharmacopoeias, knowledge of hundreds of plant medicines overlapping precisely with West African herbal traditions. Not surprised. This is not parallel independent discovery like they like to say. They love that one. This is continuous botanical exchange across the Atlantic grid. The ceremonial node maintenance, the bate. The Taino ceremonial ball court was not a sports facility. Like the Olmec ball court, it was a piezoelectrical chamber. The specific stone surfaces, the geometry of the enclosure, and the acoustic properties generated measurable electromagnetic effects. The astronomical observation, Taino's sacred sites were astronomically aligned. Their cosmological system tracked the same precessional cycle, the 25,920-year wobble of the Earth's axis, encoded in Giza, Göbekli Tepe, Angkor Wat, and the American Mounds. Same science, same people, different regional expression. Information relay, as an island chain, the Caribbean allowed line of sight communication, signal fires, reflective surfaces, acoustic drum communication across the entire arc from Trinidad and Tobago to Cuba. The Caribbean was the original fiber optic cable connecting the Atlantic and the Pacific grids. That's why you find so many different cultures there. Are you with me now? The Zemi, electromagnetic resonance objects, the Taino Zemi, carved figures of stone, wood, cotton, or bone representing ancestors, were not idols in the religious sense. They were resonance objects, physical structures carved from specific materials, often piezoelectric or higher iron stones, to capture, store, and broadcast specific electromagnetic frequencies. A Zemi in a Taino ceremonial house was functioning as what we would call today a crystal oscillator, a precisely tuned physical object maintaining a stable frequency in its own environment. I love being right. And now we move to the Kalinago, guardians of the southern arc. The Kalinago, called the Caribs by the Spanish, held the Lesser Antilles arc from Grenada to Dominica. So all your Grenadians and Dominican and Dominica. Listen to this one. The colonial narrative painted them as fierce cannibals who needed to be subdued. Your bombo clad. A propaganda campaign designed to justify enslavement of a people actively resisting colonial occupation of their breathing network. Hello? The Kalinago maintained the most direct connection to the South American mainland. Their canoe routes ran continuously from the Venezuelan coast up the island chain. Linguistically, Kalinago preserved deep Arawakan roots connecting them to the Amazon basin populations who carried the Y group Pacific maritime genetics documented by the PNAS 2021 study. The Southern Arc's role, volcanic amplification. The Lesser Antilles is an active volcanic arc sitting on subduction zones. Volcanic activity produces the most magnetically intense geological formations on Earth. High iron basalt, magnetite intrusions, and continuous low frequency seismic vibration. The Kalinago built ceremonial sites on these natural amplifiers. Connecting Y group to the Atlantic. The Kalinago Arc was the meeting point between the Pacific origin Y group populations arriving via South America along the coast and Atlantic origin West African populations arriving via prevailing trade winds and currents. The Lesser Antilles was where two branches of the original seed met in the water. Medicine and chemistry, Kalinago botanical knowledge, including specific psychoactive and medicinal plants, was the most sophisticated pharmaceutical science in the Caribbean. These plants overlap with both West African and Amazonian medicine traditions, confirming continuous multi-directional knowledge exchange. Come on now. Come on with it. Come on with it. The global clock, the processional science. Here is the question that should stop every student. How did builders in Egypt, Cambodia, Bolivia, Mexico, and the Mississippi Valley, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years and no cell phone, all encode the exact same astronomical numbers into their structures? Tell me how. The answer is not coincidence, yo. Not parallel independent discovery, like modern academia likes to say. The answer is they were the same people operating the same knowledge system, the same 315,000-year route. Come on, man. The precession of the equinoxes. This one is next. This is so much fun, by the way. Hello. The precession of the equinoxes. The Earth wobbles on its axis like a spinning top, a slow, majestic wobble taking exactly 25,920 years to complete one full cycle. During this cycle, the North Celestial Pole traces a circle through the stars. The spring equinox. Sunrise Point moves through all 12 zodiac constellations, spending approximately 2,160 years in each one. This is the precession of the equinoxes, the cosmic clock governing the great year. The precessional numbers, 72 years for the equinox point to shift 1 degree of arc through the zodiac. Just one. 72. 2,160 years for the equinox to move through one full zodiac sign. 72 times 30 degrees. Then we have 25,920 years, full precessional cycle, 2,160 times 12 signs of the zodiac gives you your 25,920. At 43,200, the Great Pyramid's height multiplied by 43,200 equals the Earth's polar radius. Its base perimeter multiplied by 43,200 equals the Earth's equatorial circumference. Do you think that is a coincidence, yo? These are master builders we're talking about. Masters, geniuses. 432 subharmonic 432 hertz is the natural tuning frequency aligned with Schumann resonance harmonics. 432,000 years appears in Sumerian king list records. Are you guys understanding this? Like, do you need clarification about this? Because it really doesn't really require that much. These same numbers appear in the dimensions of Giza, in the Hopewell earthwork measurements, in the Mayan long count calendar, in Hindu Yuga cycles, in Sumerian king lists, and in the geometric proportions of Angkor Wat. The probability of this occurring independently across unconnected cultures is mathematically negligible. Really, what it means is it's a total bag of bullshit if you don't believe it. These numbers were deposited by the same civilization. The 10,500 before Common Era precessional lock, the most important precessional timestamp in the global grid is 10,500 before Common Era, approximately 12,500 years ago. Wow! This was the age of Leo, when the spring equinox sunrise point was in the constellation of Leo and when the constellation of Orion was at its lowest point in the sky. It's nadir in the 25,920 year cycle. The Giza Plateau, Orion's belt, as at its nadir, matches the exact angle and ground layout of the three pyramids. Robert Bauval and Graham Hancock confirmed this precessional lock. The Sphinx faces due east, looking at the constellation Leo on the spring equinox horizon at 10,500 before Common Era, a lion looking at its own celestial reflection. Angkor Wat, Cambodia, ground plan mirrors the constellation Draco exactly as it appeared on the spring equinox at 10,500 before Common Era. Tiwanaku, Bolivia, Arthur Poznansky's astronomical dating, verified by independent astronomers, suggests the site was established 15,000 to 9,300 years BCE, the same pre-cataclysm era. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey, built 11,600 years ago, constructed at the same precessional moment, using these same precessional numbers encoded in its pillar arrangements. Hopewell Mounds, Ohio, earthwork enclosures encode the numbers 72, 108, 2,160 in their ground dimensions. Identical precessional harmonics, same science, different continent. A single civilization was operating globally at 10,500 before Common Era. They encoded a precessional timestamp into the ground plans of their major sites. They wanted future populations to decode the date using the sky as the key. The Younger Dryas catastrophe interrupted this civilization. The rebuilding after 10,500 BCE was a deliberate restoration of the pre-flood melanated grid. Y'all can't mess with me, yo. I got the keys. I'll tell you that right now. And the Caribbean processional role in all of this? The Caribbean island chain sits approximately 10 to 23 degrees north latitude, the zone from which the full precessional cycle of stellar risings and settings is visible over the horizon. A navigator in the Caribbean could track every star in the precessional cycle over a lifetime, making the Caribbean the ideal location for a maritime astronomical observation network. The Taínos cosmological system preserved the processional knowledge in their origin stories, their ceremonial calendar, and the geometric alignments of their bate courts. You know I'm right. Now, the Great Reunion. When the Atlantic Kemetic Moorish branch meets the Pacific branch, the Y group indigenous. When enslaved Africans arrived to this side of the continent, they were not meeting strangers, they were meeting their ancient relatives. Why did enslaved Africans arriving in the Caribbean so quickly and so naturally assimilate with the indigenous Caribbean populations? Why did maroon communities form so rapidly and so durably? Why did African cultural practices survive in the Caribbean more completely than almost anywhere else in the Americas? Why? No colorism. They were melanated. They got together. The answer is very simple. It's elegant. The answer is confirmed by genetics, archaeology, botanical analysis, linguistic parallels, and the oral traditions of both people. They were not meeting strangers. They were meeting each other. Two branches, one root. The enslaved Africans who arrived in the Caribbean carried West African Kemetic Moorish genetics, the Atlantic branch of the original melanated seed. They brought plant medicine knowledge, they brought astronomical systems, drum communication technology, oral history traditions, and spiritual practices. The Caribbean peoples, Taino and Kalinago, and their predecessors, carrying the Y group Pacific maritime genetics, carried the Americas branch of the original melanated seed. They had been on this side of the Atlantic for 15,000 years, maintaining the grid, preserving the processional knowledge, operating the relay network. When these two populations met in the Caribbean, they found the same plants. West African plants have direct Caribbean and South American relatives. Both traditions use the same botanic families for these same purposes, not independent discovery, but descent from the same root science. The same drum communication, West African djembe, and talking drum traditions for long distance communication found immediate resonance with the Caribbean and South American percussion traditions. The Schumann resonant frequencies they transmitted were exactly the same cosmological sciences. West African Dogon astronomical knowledge, specifically the encoding of the precessional cycles and the Sirius star system, found direct parallels in Taino cosmological traditions. The Schumann resonant frequencies they transmitted were the same cosmological science, West African Dogon astronomical knowledge, specifically their encoding of precessional cycles and the Sirius star system, found direct parallels in Taino cosmological traditions. Same precessional numbers, same knowledge. The same biological interface. Both populations carried melanin-rich biology optimized for electromagnetic grid. When an enslaved African stood in a Taino ceremonial space, their biology responded. The circuit completed. Their frequency resonated. They were home. Which moves us to the maroon truth. Love the maroons, by the way. When enslaved Africans escaped colonial plantations and fled into the mountains of Jamaica, Haiti, and Suriname, they did not find wilderness. They found relatives who recognized them, sheltered them, taught them the land, and merged with them. The maroon communities were not escaped slave societies. They were the reunification of two branches of the original melanated family, rebuilding fragments of the grid in the mountains away from colonial site. The Maroon Wars, particularly in Jamaica, where Maroons held the British Empire to treaty agreements, were fought on land that was spiritually and electromagnetically familiar to both peoples. The mountains held the nodes, the rivers ran on the iron veins, and the people who held them knew the science. Don't you love being right? God damn. Which brings us to the Black Mexican question, the cosmic proof. The Caribbean grid connects directly to the Mexican coast. Did you know that? And the Mexican coast contains one of the most important conformations of the entire framework. The people who say we are original on the Pacific coast of Mexico in Guerrero and Oaxaca, in the region called the Costa Chica, there are communities of Black Mexicans who have said for generations, we were here before the slave ships. We are original to this land, but no one believes them. The framework explains exactly why they are right and exactly why no one believes them. So listen to this. The mechanism of denial. The Mexican state did not officially allow Black Mexicans to identify themselves on the census until 2015. You want to talk about colorism and racism? Till 2015, they were not allowed to identify themselves on the census in Mexico, their own homeland. The mechanism of denial. The Mexican state did not officially allow them on the census, and 1 year ago, in living memory, the national narrative, built on the revolution celebration of indigenous and Spanish mestizaje, deliberately erased the melanated original population by reassigning all Black phenotype people to the category of slave descendants, visitors, imports, newcomers. This is the four-step reclassification mechanism operating at national scale. The Costa Chica sits on the Pacific coast of southern Mexico, exactly where the Pacific Maritime Y group populations would have settled after coming north from South America on the Kelp Highway 15 to 18,000 years ago. The same genetic signature found in the Amazon, in coastal Peru, in ancient Panama, the same Y group Australasian signal runs through the southern Mexican Pacific coast populations. That's what the Y DNA is about. Like the Y group population is about. The Olmec colossal heads, 17 massive basalt portraits of rulers on the Gulf Coast dated to 1200 before Common Era. Document melanated rulers operating the Gulf Coast node thousands of years before any slave ship crossed the Atlantic. These are not African imports. They are portraits of the original melanated inhabitants of Mesoamerica. One seed mixed with the layer, the Pacific Maritime genetics, producing the civilization that was the mother culture of all Mesoamerican peoples. When enslaved, West Africans arrived on the Mexican coast in the 1500s. They found people who looked like them. The assimilation was immediate. Their recognition was instant. They were branches of the same seed, meeting in the land their common ancestors had occupied for 15,000 years. What did colonialism take and what it could not take? What was taken? The Taino population. Within 50 years of Columbus's arrival, the Taino population of Hispaniola was reduced from approximately 1 million to near extinction through direct genocide, forced labor, and introduced disease. The relay operators of the Atlantic Caribbean grid were eliminated as a functioning civilization within one human lifetime. The ceremonial sites, Taino Bate courts, Zemi repositories, and the astronomical observation sites were destroyed or converted into colonial churches and fortifications. The colonial church was systematically placed on top of existing ceremonial nodes, capturing the electromagnetic amplification while replacing its function. The knowledge systems, Taino cosmological knowledge, botanical pharmacopoeia, and the astronomical traditions and oral histories were declared hearsay and suppressed. What survived did so in coded form inside Catholic saint veneration, inside folk medicine traditions labeled superstition, inside drum patterns labeled entertainment. The legal identity through the Spanish caste system, Negro, mulatto, Zambo, mestizo. The melanated populations were classified as either slaves, African origin, or mixed race, indigenous and Spanish. The category of original melanated Caribbean autochton was legally eliminated. But what could not be taken? The genetic memory. The Y group genetics survive in Caribbean and South American populations today. The melanin biology that interfaces with the Earth's electromagnetic field cannot be administratively erased from DNA. The land itself, the Caribbean plate, the volcanic arcs, the iron veins, the telluric current channels running through the islands. Colonialism cannot relocate the geology. The nodes are where they always were. They are waiting for us to wake up. The oral traditions, fragments of precessional knowledge, botanical science, and ceremonial protocol survived in the Rastafari tradition in Jamaica, in Voodoo in Haiti, in Santeria in Cuba, the Garifuna oral traditions, and Maroon communities. These are not African religions transplanted. They are reassembled pieces of the original Caribbean grid science. The recognition when two branches of the original seed meet, when an African descended person and an indigenous Caribbean or Mexican person look at each other, there is sometimes a recognition that precedes language. That is not mysticism, yo. That is biological coherence. The melanin responding to shared precessional frequency, the original circuit still trying to complete itself. This is beautiful. And for the conclusion of this wonderful information, our core truths from today, I'll give you 7 points. Okay? Caribbean connects 4 global grids. 4 global grids. That's what the Caribbean connects. The Caribbean was the relay nexus connecting the Atlantic grid, the Pacific grid, the North American grid, and the Gulf Coast grid into one operational system. 2. Melanin is a superconductor at 7.83 degrees Hertz. Melanin is a biological semiconductor, superconductor that interfaces with Earth's own electromagnetic field to generate cellular energy and shift consciousness toward alpha-theta states of healing and expanded awareness. 3. The battery, copper over iron, galvanic engineering. The original builders placed copper over iron veins to create galvanic cell batteries, amplifying the Earth's natural electromagnetic field at specific nodes. Not prestige goods, not for jewelry, but electrical engineering. 4. The clock, the precession, 25,920 years, unifies Giza and the Americas. This same precessional science encoded in 25,920 year cycle numbers 72, 2160, and 43,200 appears at Giza, Angkor Wat, Tiwanaku, Göbekli Tepe, and the American Mounds, confirming a single global civilization operating before 10,500 BCE. 5. The attack, mound destruction, was a biological severance. The destruction of 100,000 plus North American mounds was a biological attack, severing the melanated population from their natural electromagnetic power source. Number 6, The reunion. When enslaved Africans arrived in the Caribbean, they were not meeting strangers. They were meeting the other branch of the original family, reuniting across 15,000 years of geographic separation on the same electromagnetic nodes their common ancestors had built. And the final proof, the black Mexicans, the Costa Chica, prove the pre-slavery Pacific connection. The black Mexicans of Costa Chica are original. Their melanated phenotype is not evidence of slave ancestry. It is evidence of 15,000 plus years of continuous presence as the original Pacific maritime seed of Mesoamerica. That is the conclusion of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope that you are getting what you need from these teachings. This is the 30-day Black History, the Kemetic Moorish Octontons 30-day history lessons and teaching. And when you are finished with this 30 days, if you haven't learned anything, if you've been watching all these videos and you ain't learned nothing, turn off your brain, because it now work. All right? Anyway, signing out, Trinis, Trinidad and Tobago, the Caribbean's master plan. Oh my God, I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for showing up. Day 13 finished. Day 14 tomorrow. We're nearly halfway through, but we are not done with the knowledge transfer. Get ready for day 14 tomorrow and have yourself a wonderful day.